Yeah, so as I said, today we are going to look at the CSS. We are still now on the colors, the unit, and the background. You understand? So today, this is our main topic. Today's Wednesday. We look at the colors, we look at the unit, we look at the background. But I think last Monday, there is something that I didn't show you about the selector. So let's look at the selectors. Just the same thing as we did with the internal inline and then the external. You understand? But this one, because we are dealing with professional application of the CSS, I think we have to talk about the selector, which will be on the external CSS. You understand? So last week we designed this. I mean, our file was what style.css. And then we did what? We did link it with the external file, of which the href is what? Style.css, linking to our file. Understand? And yesterday, and last Monday, I told you whenever you are adding some link to the external CSS, make sure you test it and see if it is working. I understand. So if I told you, for instance, if there is href like this, if the href is there and the CSS is not linked correctly, you see there, the CSS is not applied here because you didn't link it very well. So you have to make sure it is linked, then you see it is applied, right? So let me do this because this one is an internal. Then I will remove the inline one to the inline. And then now we are going to focus on the external one only because that is the one we are always going to focus on. You understand? So normally you see your code to be like this. The CSS is like the linking is here always, and then the file is here, separate. So you create your own CSS file here, and then you have your index.html here. So now let's try to see what we can apply here, right?
Yeah.
So let me go to the W2 website.
Hello?
And yeah, so let me look at the introduction. We talk about the CSS, what the CSS is. And as I told you, is the language we use to style a web page. And when we talk about style, if you see anything what is style, it means CSS. You understand? So when someone say what is CSS, it's just a language we use to style the web page. Understand? And it stands for Cascading Style Sheet. That is the full name of what? The CSS, Cascading Style Sheet. You understand? So these are some of the explanation. Describes how HTML elements are to be displayed on screen, paper, or in other media. You understand? It saves a lot of work. It can control the layout of multiple web pages all at once. And I said external style sheet are stored in CSS files, which we did here. So this is the external file. So when you look at this application that they did here, you can see they have applied different style on this page. So when you want to look at the next style, you can click here. You see it has changed. You see what the color that you apply and the font that you use. Style 3, let me see. You see this one is like this. Style 4, you see this one. And then style, no style will be like this. So this one is just only HTML, no style. Understand? So this tells you that when you use CSS or when you apply CSS to your web page, it beautifies your web page. So when I click the style to look at, understand? So comparing these beautiful colors with this, you can understand the difference. But we ask ourselves, why use CSS? You understand? So it says that it used to define style for your web pages, including the design, the layout, and variation in display for different devices and screen sizes. You understand? So this is how it is written, as we explained earlier.
This is the external.
Yeah, this is the external one. Yeah, this is the external one. So if this is external one, if I want this to be internal, what can I add for this to be internal? What do you think? What should I add? What element should I add to this, all of this, so that this will turn into internal CSS?
Style element.
Style elements, okay. So we look at the syntax. So now here is the name. Look at how it is called. The H1 now is what? Selector. Right? So it means that we are targeting the H1 elements, which is now we call it selector. Right? And then we bring our curly bracket, right? We bring our curly bracket, right? And then what? Our property. You see the name? Color is now a property. We bring our column, and then we bring the color, which is value, blue. Then we bring what? Semicolon, meaning we've ended with this. This is ended. And we are what? Bringing what? We are adding another style, which is font size, which is also for property, colon, and then we give the value, which is 12 pixels. And then we ended with what? Semicolon. Now we are finished with this. You understand?
Yeah.
So the selector, that is this, points to the HTML element you want to style. Right? The declaration block contains one or more declarations separated by semicolon. This. So this is separated and this is separated. So these were separated by semicolon. So this is the first one and this is the second one. I understand? Each declaration includes a CSS property, name, and a value. Right? Property and its value. Right? Separated by a column. So this is a column. Property, value. Multiple CSS declarations are separated with semicolon, and declaration blocks are surrounded by curly brackets. So these are curly brackets. So if you want to add another target, like maybe we are going to target H2, then we make sure we add semicolon here, so that this one tells that this one has ended. Right?
Yeah.
We can add this semicolon here, and then we bring this down, and then we add a different style. So this is how it is done. We target what? The P or paragraph as our selector. So P selector, and then color, we apply red, we got semicolon here, and then text align to be center. Right? So this is how it is. This is how it looks like. So this is how the P, here is the paragraph, hello world, and we targeted the what? The P, which is what? Our selector now. We added color, which is red. You see it is red, right? And then test align, we align the test center. So the test came center. So if here at clear the center, test align and right, the test will go to the right side. So if I run this, you see the test has gone to right side. If I make it left, and I run this, test came toward left. But if I see center, test align, it will be the center. So this selector, which is the paragraph, is affecting both these two elements. The first paragraph element and the second paragraph element. Right?
Yeah.
So that is how it is. So P is a selector in the CSS and it points to the HTML element we want to start. Color is a property and red is a property value. Text align is a property and center is a property value. You understand?
Yeah.
So now here, can you guess what is the answer? In the following example, which part is the selector?
P.
P. Okay, that's correct. P is the selector. Okay, so let's continue. So this is what I wanted you to see, the selectors. You understand? Before we arrive to our main topic for today. So CSS selectors, we have different types. You understand? So CSS selectors are used to find or select or target the HTML element you want to style. You understand? It's used to find or we target or we select the HTML element we want to style. Then we can divide the selectors into 5 categories. We have simple selectors, meaning select elements based on name, ID, or class. You understand? We select the element based on name, ID, or class. So you may ask, what is this name, what is this ID, and what is this class? So let's go into our VS Code and look at all of those. So now we have our CSS file here, right? And then we have our elements here, right? And then we have opened it using our show preview, right? So let's look at this. Now, let's say we are going to target some element here, right? So for instance, if we are going to target the body, so our selector is now body. So we can go here inside the style, the file, and say body, curly brackets, and then background color, and then we apply, let's say we apply aqua color, and it has been affected here. So it has been applied here, right? So you see we have applied our background color to our body selector, right? So now this selector is what? Name selector. This. You understand? So we can call this as name selector because what we selected there, the name or ID or class. You understand? So we selected those ID, and then we can also do it in this way. Since we are talking about 3 things here, the name, the ID, and the class. Okay. how can we add the class or ID? So now we are going to talk about what is this ID and class. ID and class selector. And there's an ID and class selector. So in here, when we are here, look at, for instance, we are inside the body. We can say ID, then we bring what? Equals to, right? We assign it to the value. So what value? So here you can type any name that you want. That is why here it says name, ID, or class, right? So you see ID. So now I can type anything here. Maybe the body, instead of the body, if I don't want to target the body, but I want to use a specific name, you understand? Then I can clear this and say body color. Or if I don't want to write it like this, I can just write it background BG color. You understand? So now my ID is BG color. And then I can add what? Class. And the class, I can also give it different name as I want. Maybe BG class, something like that. You can give any name that you want. But mostly we give names which normally related to or relate to the body, to the element that you are targeting or that you want to give the ID to or the class to.
Mm.
You understand? So now we have ID and now we have class. Both can be added in any element that you have here. You can go here and add ID, give anything. If it's H1, you can write head1, any name that you want. You can also give a class and say maybe something like head class. Anything that you want to write, it's permissible. It depends on how you want. You are given the name, so you have to name it the way it's better. You understand?
Mm.
You can name it, but normally when you are naming it, there is a rule that you have to name it. Normally, we don't use numbers or anything like numbers. No, it doesn't start with number, like number one, number two. No, you always have to make sure it is letters, or it can be mixed with numbers, but normally it's preferable to use the letters, especially small letters. You understand? For instance, here I wrote head one. I can really write it head dash one. It's okay. I can make it like one. This one is okay. You understand? So it depends
Mm.
on how you name it. You understand?
Yeah.
So for instance, let's tackle the body first for now. No, let's tackle let me delete this for the body and let's tackle that of the H1 elements. So we're now going to tackle the H1 element, which is this, right? So I
Mm.
can just clear all this so that we get space so that it wouldn't confuse you. So this is what we are targeting now. Let me just clear and write something inside. See maybe okay, select something like this. Okay, now I can leave it just like this. So we are targeting this selector. So now we could have just target the H1, right? And say this one is the element, right? I could just say I want to add something to the element H1, and then I say I just want the color, and I say I want yellow. Then so you see it is yellow,
Mm.
right? H1,
Yeah.
H1. Now it is this one is yellow. because that is affecting on this line, each one, right? Okay, so I give it ID and I also give it class. You understand? So those are this one, the first one. You see, we can divide CSS selector into 5 categories. So the first, we're talking about first one now, which is the simple selectors. And it says that it's based on name, ID, class, right? So the name is, we can name it as, we can take the one, H1, which is an H1 element. It is a selector, right? So this is the first one, the name, right? So if we don't want to write it as name, we can also what? Clear this. 1 minute. We can also go down. Maybe let me hide this. Now it's not working. I've commented this, not working now. So I can say instead of H1, so far as I give it ID, and I give a name, I can also use this name that I gave it to, this name, instead of using H1. So this name here now become my ID. So instead of using H1, now I can use what? This head one as my target. So I can just write this, curly brackets, and do what? And say color. What color would I add? Maybe I will add, let's see, blue. You understand? But now you may ask, why is it not applying here? Because I added the blue. Why is it not affecting here? You understand? You say, oh, but I have targeted the H1, the head one as the ID, but why is it not working here? It is not working because the ID has what we call a hash symbol. That hash symbol makes us know that this is an ID. Because for instance, if I wrote head one, you wouldn't know what is the head one is doing here. You understand? So in order to know that this head one comes from an ID, I have to add that symbol. You understand? So this symbol represents the ID. It's a symbol that we understand that this name is from ID. So you see my cursor here. Look at the top. It says element ID head one. Right? It means that the element is the H1, right? And the ID is equal to head one, which is we are targeting the same place. Right?
Yeah.
So that is how we add an ID as a selector. So first of all, this is the name H1, which we targeted here H1. But if we say no, I don't want to target this H1. I want to target the ID, then I can give it an ID and use this one. And when I'm using it, I have to make sure my hash is there. And I wrote the name H1.
So the H1 and the ID is the same.
They are targeting the same thing.
The same thing. Okay.
You understand? They are targeting the same line. You see, we are talking about this line, this code here. You understand? So they are targeting whatever you see here within that line, anything that I apply will affect that same line. You understand? So I'm targeting, even though the names are different, here is ID, here is class, but whatever I add will affect this same thing. You understand? So that is the ID one. What about the class? Okay, we can comment this one too. The class, what we normally do also is, this is a class, and the name is what? I think let me just make it the same name so that it becomes very easier for you to understand. Okay, you see both of them have the same name, right?
Yeah.
ID has head one, class 2 has head one. But in order to understand the differences now, here I use what? Hash, right?
Yeah.
So now I understand that this is an ID. But if it is a class, I'll use what? Dot.
Mm.
And write head one, semicolon, and add the same color, the background color, color, and say blue. You see, it is also blue. You understand?
Yeah.
So in everyone, whichever you want to select, the CSS will apply to it. You understand? If you
Mm.
are going to select the name, which is the main selector H1, or the ID, make sure you add the hash or the class and make sure you add the dot. It will affect the same line.
Mm.
You understand? So that is how the selector is done. So that's the first category: name, ID, class. Name, ID, class. You understand?
Yeah.
I can see, so far as I'm targeting the same thing, I can even leave it as this one, the way you see it. I can leave them like that, make them work. So now I can say this one, maybe instead of the color, I can say I want to add background color, maybe green. You see, background color has been affected, right?
Mm.
Then this one, I see I don't want background color. Maybe I want to leave it as the color of the text is maybe this color. You see, it has affected the same thing, right? And this one, I can
Yeah.
change it and see this one, I want to add font size, maybe 20 pixels.
Mm.
No, no, sir. All of them are targeting the same thing,
Same
even
thing.
though we have applied different style to it, but all of them are applied to the same line, this thing.
Mm.
You understand? But there are differences where you want to use it. There are places that you want to use it. That is why they are there.
Mm.
So far as they have given you a lot of options that you can select, it doesn't mean that they don't have any other meaning or they don't have anything to do there. They also have the reason why they are there. Because you cannot just I have I can target head one, I can target head one as a class and or ID. Why is it necessary? Since I can target the H1, why is it necessary to bring this head
All
one
of.
and head one here? Now you may be asking, why is it necessary? You understand?
Yeah.
So the difference is that when we talk about the
Hello?
ID, this ID that you see, when you are in class, they call your name. You are the only one who has that name.
Mm.
For example, I'm giving an example, right? Your
Yeah.
ID, maybe you have an ID card, for instance, for this as a student, right? So the
Yeah.
name which is on your ID card, you are the only person who has that ID. There's no any other person that can have that ID except
Yeah.
you, because your name is on it. You have your student number and everything. Other students who also have their own ID. So this ID is something we call unique. You understand? Always you see, it defines a unique identifier which must be unique in the whole document. You understand? Someone cannot have your ID. If you use the ID, it is finished. It is your own. Someone cannot use the same ID. You understand?
Yeah.
So you only have one ID within the same element. But for class, you can have different class. Hope you understand.
Mm.
You can have
How
different.
can? Mm. Okay.
For instance, in order for you to understand, here I can add H2, right? But maybe I can use the same thing, H1. Can add something like selector, tutorial, maybe 2. You see what is happening? When I add H1, the H1 is affecting. Which H1? This background color. Because this is H1, it already affected with this. But the others are not affected because they don't have H1, they don't have ID and class. Right?
Yeah.
So when I add ID, and maybe I add the name to be head 1, what happened?
Yeah, it got affected.
It got affected, right? What about if I say class and say head 1 also got affected because now they are the same. This is H1, this is H1, so they are all the same, right? But what about if I say this one as H2? What happened? Do you see what happened to the second
color
one?
disappeared.
I mean, the H2 is not the same as H1, right? So what we applied here as a background color is not there. The green color is not there, right?
Yeah.
But then the head 1 and this one are there. You understand? But this one, normally you see it is unique, especially when you're using what? JavaScript. The ID, we are targeting this as a unique identifier. I hope you understand. So look at this. Here is the ID, here is the class. So the second one is the combinator selectors. Select element based on a specific relationship between them. Understand? So let's go through. Look at some of the example that they give. The element selector selects HTML element based on the element name. You understand? So which element name here? Paragraph, which is an element, right? That is the one with it. For instance, here we did what we said H1, which is the elements. So here, and then ID selector. What is the ID selector? The ID selector uses the ID attribute of an HTML element to select specific elements. The ID of an element is unique within a page. So the ID selector is used to select one unique element. Understand? So to select an element with a specific ID, you write what? Hash. You write hash character followed by the ID of the element. So what did they do? Hash character and followed by the ID with the addis PARA1. Understand?
Yeah.
And then here is an ID name cannot start with a number. As I told you. For instance, this is the ID name. Here, you cannot just start with a number and say your ID name is 1. And it cannot start with number. And what? The CSS class selector. The class selector selects HTML element with specific word attribute, and it also use what we call the period or full stop or dot or period character followed by the class name. You understand? So here we put dot and what we use there, the class name. You can also specify that only specific HTML element should be affected by a class. And it depends on how you want it. you can specify that only specific element should be affected by a class. For instance, this, it has what? P dot center. So this is our paragraph, and this is what? The name of the ID.
Mm.
You understand? So each element can also refer to more than one class. You can have more than one class. For instance, how can I have more than class? This is what? My first class, right? I can give a space. I can write head 2. I can also write head 3 in the same class. So you can have different class, and I can target each of them. But whichever I target, it will still affect the same line.
Mm.
Understand? So what you can, if you want to make it separate, you make sure you add what? You give a space like this. So this space, this one is different, this one is different, this one is different. You understand? So if I go and see head 3, if I say here, since it's a class, I have to put dot, right? Dot
Yeah.
head 3, curly bracket, and add what? Let's say I'm adding font size. Let's say I'm adding font size, and I make the font size to be 40 pixels. You see, even though it is head 3, but it's the same line, it is the same line, and it is under class, which we have different. We can target each one, head 1, which will affect the same line, head 2, head 3. But here, can we do this? For instance, here I have an ID head 1, and I go like this and say I want a head 2. Can we do this?
No.
Because this head 1, head 2, this head 2 cannot be done because head has only one unique identifier. It's unique for any single word line.
Mm.
You understand? So for
Yeah.
instance, if we come here and say this is head 2, right? And I go
Mm.
here and say I want to apply an ID as head 2. Head what? 2, right? And say I want to add maybe color. And I say blue. What happened? Did you see did he apply any color to it?
No.
Understand? So this ID is unique. You cannot have two ID on the same line, but you can have
Mm.
what? Multiple class. Understand? So here it has to be only one like this. Only ID
Mm.
one like this. But for the class, you can have what? This, you can have this, you can have this. And whichever you take
You
and you
can.
apply, it will be affected. For instance, I will take the 8.h2 and I change, maybe I will write something like test decoration, and I say underline. It so affect this one. You understand? Even though I choose what? This. I hope you understand.
Yeah.
It's very important. Okay. So we also have the other selector, which is called the universal selector. Universal selector, and the symbol is what? Asterisk. Its symbol is asterisk, or some will say multiple sign, but normally this one is asterisk because we have multiple sign as this, and then we have asterisk as this. I understand. So they are different. They are not the same. So when you see this, sometimes some people can use this and it works. You understand? But normally the symbol is what? Is like this symbol. It's like this symbol, which is multiplication. But here we call this one asterisk, and it is what we call universal selector. And what does it do? It selects all the what? The elements in the body. You understand? It selects everything
Hello?
that you see from the body. The CSS reach. You understand? Are you there?
You said what?
I said the asterisk, it is what
Yeah.
we call the universal selector. And when you apply CSS on it, any style you apply, it will affect all the HTML element on that page.
Okay.
Because here you see that we are applying for H1, we apply for H2. But when it is for universal selector, when you apply anything, it will affect everything inside this body. You understand? So if I go here and say I want to apply, normally you see it at the top because since it comes before the body, normally you see at the top. Someone will write asterisk and then curly brackets. Then whatever you apply here, it will affect all whatever it is inside. You understand? It's like he is a king. He can do whatever he like. You understand? So now if I say I want to add something like maybe background color, and I said I want the background color to be black. You see, all the background color is black. You understand? And if I say I want to add a color, main color, and I said I want the color to also be yellow. You see, all the color, the text color is yellow.
Yeah.
Even though we all also have different color here, but because this one is the king, it affects all of whatever it is inside. So all of these are override. You understand? And if what you see that it has already built in margin and padding inside the browser itself. You understand? The browser has its own margin and padding. So normally the reason why we add this to remove all the browser margin and padding. So normally we write like margin and we put it to 0. You see now it's moved like here. You understand? And then we made the padding also to be 0. Made the padding 0 and then box sizing, and then we make it border box. Understand? So that everything will be inside the body, inside like a box, and it cannot overlap. You understand? So whatever it's inside here, it's like this. It cannot overlap. I hope you understand. So that is normally what we only use this for. Because every element or every selector that you select has to have its specific purpose. You understand? So when we talk about body, we know that we are dealing with things that are inside here. So normally in the body, you normally deal with background, whether background color, whether background image. You understand? Then we come to the H1. And H1 normally is because it is a test, we normally look at the font. Since it is a test, we look at the font family, font width, font style. So each element or each selector has its specific property that we apply. You understand? So here it is what? H1 font size, you can say 50 pixels. You understand? And then we can go here. All of them has their own listing. So if you see H1, we are talking about what? Tests. So definitely you talk about font. So everything like which deals with text, we look at the what? We look at the font size, font weight. So that's how you have to understand it. Just look at this, we say what? Universal selector. And universal selector, why is it important? It's important because some browsers already comes with a margin padding. So we want to remove that margin padding so that we can work, we know exactly the font or the border that we added, our own padding that we added. But if this weren't there, like this, if I clear all this, you see this one is here and this one is here. So it means it already had their own what margin selected or added into it. So if I didn't bring that in and I'm working, maybe here I added some padding, maybe I say 10. That 10 is not only 10, it is 10 plus that of the already built-in browser padding. You understand? So maybe if the browser padding also has maybe let's say 4, then the normal or the accurate padding will be 14. You understand? But you will see it as you wrote 10, but the actual that will display is maybe let's say like 14 pixels. Because of what? Because of the built-in browser padding and margin. That's why mostly you see us selecting the universal selector and then taking off the margin and padding, making it zero, and then padding, making it 0. And then in order not for any layout to be overflow, we add what? Box sizing to be what? Border box, so that all the content will be inside like a box and it wouldn't overflow. So mostly these three things are when you look at most of the website, you see them inside. You understand?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's continue. So these are the selector, this universal selector. We have something we call also grouping selector. Grouping selector. So the example is assuming that we want to select each and every of this. H1, we give it what? A style, H2, A, what, and P. When you write something like this, your code will be very longer. You understand? But when you look at this, the same star is applied to each and every one. Look, here is the same star, here is the same star, and here is the same star. You understand? But we are separating this, and which make it very what? Very long. So why don't we find a way to group all our name selector, and then since they are all the same, we apply only one. So how do we do that? Then we do it by what? Applying what? Comma. So if we take P, we bring comma, H2 bring comma, then we can add everything, and then we can give it our style. You
Okay.
understand? So instead of writing it separately, like this, for instance, like this one, this one. So far as we know that we are having the same thing. Let's say here I have what? I have H1, H2. And whatever I'm going to apply to H1 is the same thing that I'm going to apply to H2, right? So then I don't need to separate them and write them differently. I just need to write H1 and bring comma, H2, and that is it. And it applies to what? To both of them. So this is what we call grouping. Then
I
we
saw
group
it
them.
before.
So this is what we call grouping. We group them together. So this star is affecting both H1, H2. So that is what we call grouping. Okay, so let's move. So look at the simplest thing, the ID. That's how it's written. An example is like this. You understand? The class 2 is this dot, and then the universal selector. Select all elements, and this one is the element, the main element. And this one is the element, like a grouping. Here we select div, and then comma, we select p. Understand? So that's how it is. So we look at how to. This how to, I think we've already done it because I talk about external, internal, and inline, right? So I don't need to repeat it. It's talking about the same thing, the external and the internal, you understand? And the what?
Mm,
And then inline.
fine.
So it's the same thing that we did.
Mm.
Mhm. So we can look at, okay, let me try if you can answer this question. Drag and drop the correct tag to conclude an external CSS file. So what should we add here? Well, how can we drag and drop? You have to drag this one to here. Which one are you going to drag to here? So that it will make it correct. Come again?
Link. Link.
Link.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello?
Hmm. Okay, let's see. Okay. It's something easy. It's not difficult, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move to comments. Comment, you know that when we were using HTML has its own comment, right? Normally, what do
Yeah.
we do when we're adding a comment?
You write the word, then um you select control
Mhm.
forward slash, then it's
Okay, that one
commented.
is perfect. Okay, so imagine we are not using shortcut. If you want to write it, how do you write it?
We are using shortcut.
No, if we are not using shortcut, how do you write it in full?
In full.
Yeah, because if for shortcut, when you write like this, maybe I wrote it like this, and I have to highlight and write what control forward slash.
Yeah.
Understand? This one is what using shortcut. But when you are writing it in what in full, you know that we write the same thing. It's even had I have one here. Write what less than, right, and bring
Mm,
exclamation dash dash, and it's completed for you. Then you start writing things here. If you write anything here, it is
mm,
what it is a comment. So it is the same thing as this. So normally know how to write it. Then you think about the shortcut. Because when you do it like this, like maybe like this, and then you highlight it, control forward slash, it gives you this way, right?
yeah.
So if you go somewhere and you don't have um, like let's say you don't have that keyword that can type shortcut, you don't definitely have to type it by your hand, right?
Mm,
So as this one is comment, this one is only inside HTML, right? So far as style is also a separate file, it also has its own comments, right?
yeah.
So how do you think we can use the same thing? So the comment is you bring what? Forward slash, right?
Yeah.
And bring what? Asterisk, right? You bring forward
Mm,
slash asterisk, and then maybe let's say that thing is inside, and then you bring what? Another word asterisk, and then forward slash, right? Right? Or
mm,
if I'm not mistaken, you see it is here, right?
mm.
So this one is what? This is a comment. But this is what? This is a
So
single
is it
line
different
comment.
from HTML and CSS?
Yeah, it's different from HTML. In HTML, you don't
So
add
you
this one.
can apply the one from HTML to CSS,
What do
or
you mean?
like the one that we did on in HTML, like
Yeah,
control/. Can I
yeah, you can use the
able
same
to
thing.
use it in?
Yeah, you can use the same thing. Use the same thing. But I want you to understand the difference, not the shortcut. The shortcut, if you use the same thing to give, like, for instance, if I said, um, maybe I write this and I'll highlight it, right? And forward
Mm,
slash. Understand? It's the same thing to give you the same comment, like the same as we did in the HTML, right? But you have to know the difference, how it is written.
okay.
You understand? So in style, in CSS file, this is how it looks.
Yeah.
But in what? In HTML, this is how it looks. You understand? And in JavaScript, it also has how it looks. In JavaScript, it is like this, forward, forward. You understand?
Mm,
So every language has its own comment, the way it is commented. Some can have, maybe if you go to Python like this, it also has its own comments.
mm,
You understand? I mean, some are similar. Some you can go and meet the same thing as you already know. Understand? So you have to understand this one. So if, for instance, you have to add a comment at the top, you can just use this and add a comment to describe this thing that you're adding.
mm,
So this is also a comment. But this one is what we call a single word comment. You can also add it comment
mm,
wherever you want in the code, like this one.
mm,
But make sure it is what? Open and close. This one is forward slash aesthetic. This one is what? Aesthetic forward slash. Like this. If you make a mistake and you left this, for instance, this has to be like this, right? And you made a mistake
yeah.
like this, and you made a mistake and you didn't bring this, you see it gives you error here.
Mm,
Understand? So make sure you know exactly what. Sometimes if you made a mistake, it can even affect the code that you did here.
mm,
So always take note of it. And then we have what? Even in the middle of the code, you can also do that. You see.
mm.
So this is a comment. This doesn't affect the blue. No, it's just in the middle. It doesn't affect the blue. Because it is like
So
it's hidden.
what is the need for that?
The need for that is, as I told you, if you are explaining something, for instance, if someone is learning code, right? And you want to
Yeah.
explain the person about this 50, what is this 50 pixels doing here,
Mm,
right? So I can say, I can
yes.
just write something like this, right? So this doesn't show in the code. It is hidden, right? So if I want to
Mm,
explain something to the person, I can just write something. I see the 50 pixels add maybe 50 font size to the tests, right?
mm, mm,
But it didn't show in the code. So the person will see, oh, this is what is explaining.
explanation.
And so that's why I told you the last time. This comment are just like a note. In your book, when you're writing something like note, you jot some points,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
So those are just like a point, jotting of points to
Mm,
remember maybe later. But normally, we don't normally put it even inside. We normally put it above, so that it will just explain the below code for you. You understand? Mhm. Comment can also span multiple lines like this. Make sure the open is there and the closing is there. You understand? Instead of single line, it is in a multiple word line like this. So look at what if I do something like this, Then I do something like this. Now, this one looks like it is commented, but no. Like this, give you explain. Sometimes the browser understand what you mean. So sometimes it doesn't give you error. You understand? Unless maybe they understood that this is a full mistake that you are doing, so that it gives you error. But sometimes when you even do it like this, it sometimes understand that it just lets you pass. You understand?
Mm.
Because professional editor, there are a lot of things which are added inside. So sometimes when you see something like it, just ignore it for you.
Mm.
Mhm. You always have to be vigilant with your code so that you know that even the code editor will correct something for you. But then if you go online and publish it, that is where you see the mistake. Because when you publish it online, the online is not a code. It doesn't understand those, or it doesn't have any built-in um, plugin or something to make it right for you.
Mm.
So that's why it's very good to be vigilant in whatever you write.
Yeah.
So this was what the HTML comment, right?
Yeah.
You see this, and this one is the HTML. This one is CSS. So note about that. So let's see what is the correct syntax for a CSS comment.
CSS comment. The third one.
The third one. Okay, that's perfect. You see. So that is how it is. And then we have error. Okay, this is just to show you about the selector when you do something wrong and when you do something bad, which is which doesn't allow you to, or the style to be affected. For instance, forgetting a semicolon at the end of a property can break the style rule. For example, like this, we are selecting what? So this one is what am I selecting? This one. What's the name?
A selector. Mm. Oh, and this thing, class.
Class. Yeah. So I'm selecting a class, right? I'm using a class here. And I give what? A color, which is right. And then they what? Semicolon. And then red. So in here, can you pinpoint or can you look at the wrong thing that they did here?
Mm.
Make sure any symbol are very important here.
Color red. Is it wrong?
Come again?
Is there something wrong
Yeah,
inside?
look at it. There's something wrong with the code. So for us, this one wouldn't work.
Mm.
Okay, let me show you this. Let me show you this the example here. For instance,
Mm.
here we have, let's say we are going to target, let's say we are working on this H1 only, right? Let me write it like this. So let's say we are targeting the H1, which is the top here, right? Then
Mm.
what am I going to target? Let's say I'm going to target color. Color. I wrote color. When I wrote the color, then I say I want blue, right?
Yeah.
I want blue. Then I come down and say background color. Background color. Then I said what? Yellow, right?
Mm.
I say yellow, right? So now if I
Yeah.
say yellow, what's the problem? It's not working. Why?
Mm.
Why is it not working? Even though there's color, there is this color, why is it not working? What is the problem here? Just make sure you watch all the symbol, the character. What is missing here? You can even compare it to this. Just look at it very well. Look at it through.
You did not bring the semicolon
For where? From where?
for the blue.
The blue. You understand? So now it means that if you do any mistake, you see I didn't add the semicolon. So it didn't work. But now when I added, you see it's working.
Yeah.
So that is why here it is telling you will see in your mind, if you don't you're not attentive to those things, you will be sitting down and say, why is it not applying?
Yeah,
But
me too.
I did
I did
everything.
not realize it until the end.
So you will be saying that well, I did everything correct, but what is happening? But
Yeah.
because this is a professional editor, you see, when I didn't added it, it gave me an error. It already
Yeah.
gave me say semicolon expected. You understand? But assuming you are doing this without using this word editor, you are using it on maybe let's say normal test editor like Notepad, you wouldn't
Mm.
know and you wouldn't get this attention. So you go and say, why is it not applying? But I did everything correct. I
Mm.
understand. So it is very, very important. Another one is said invalid property names. Using a property name that does not exist will simply be ignored by the browser. So what happened? Look at, we have our bad, we have our color, blue, font size 16 pixels. So what is the problem? Well, let me copy this and say, okay, let me just copy the inside one. That's the one. And say I'm going to clear this and use the one we give. So now, what is wrong?
Mm.
Why is it not working? What's wrong?
The color.
Okay, the color. It's
You made
supposed
a
to be.
mistake.
So you see, the property, so the browser doesn't understand what is COLR. What is that? It's not a property in the
Mm.
browser, so it doesn't understand. So you have to make sure you write it very well. Now you see it is applied. You understand? So here, that is
Mm.
what it's trying to say. Color, you had COLR. Okay. Correct properties, but invalid value will also be ignored, right? So now look at what is happening. Invalid value. What is happening? Look at. Do you have any weight as negative?
No.
So you see that we don't have any weight, a weight of something negative weight. What is that? So the brother doesn't understand this. So it will not be affected. On closed braces. On closed braces. So if I wrote this like this,
Without
what
glue.
without closing? The open but then close. So it doesn't understand what I do.
Mm.
Extra colon or braces. That happened. See,
Extra column.
extra colon. You see here, I added two columns. Supposed to be one. You understand? So, and saying tips to avoid this error, you have to use what? Use a code editor.
Mm.
So the code editor we're using is this VS Studio Code, right? Validate your CSS with a CSS inter or validator. And write CSS in small section and test frequently. So whatever you write, make sure you test it. So if here I wrote something like blue, I test, maybe I clear this and wrote maybe green. I have to test it and see, save it. Is it working? Yes. Then I move again. Font size, maybe 100 pixels. Is it working? Yes, it's working. Then I save, I move again. You understand?
Mm.
So that's what you're talking about here.